Welcome to ABC Interactive English. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
And I am Karen. Today we are looking at part 2 of visiting the world's floating villages. Well, you know how we learned what a floating village is, right? And we know basically it's a village that floats on the water.
That's
and
right.
It's probably very pretty. And then we have the bridges that can link the houses together. But let me ask you, Mike, because I have never been to a floating village before.
Okay.
How about you?
I did actually get to go to one floating village not far from Taiwan in the country of Cambodia.
Oh, really?
A lot of you guys might know Cambodia. Maybe you've been there. One of the famous places to go in Cambodia is the town of Siem Reap, which is where you go to see Angkor Wat, all those beautiful, famous temples they have there in Cambodia. You definitely should try to see this place. It is amazing. But right near there, there's a huge lake, the biggest lake in Cambodia, called Tonle Sap. And on the lake, they have floating villages. So we took a boat. We kind of took a long, maybe 2-hour journey from the land out into the lake. And we went to one of the floating villages. We stopped there. We went to a convenience store.
So there's a convenience store
well,
like
it's a
in the
little
village.
store, and they had drinks and snacks and souvenirs for tourists. And you can see kids swimming in the water, waving to the boat, people in boats driving around with their shopping, men with their fishing that they've caught, the fish they've caught. So it's like being in the middle of a very colorful little village with people living on the water. It made me kind of want to live there.
Okay.
But I think we talk about this in another unit. I have a lot of books. And so I thought, oh, the wet air is going to make my books fall apart. I can't live here.
That's true.
But it really was an interesting lifestyle, an interesting way to live. And I like the water. I like boats. So part of me did kind of think, you know, maybe for a month, just to live here would be a really interesting experience.
Definitely. I think, you know, having a vacation there would definitely be very, very nice.
I mean, it's nothing fancy. It's all very, I don't know if people have air conditioning there, and no one was very rich, but they seem to have a very peaceful,
happy
beautiful life out there. But again, if the typhoon comes, if the rain blows, I don't know if I would like it so much. But it was really an interesting way to see how people live in a way that's very different from what we know.
All right. Okay, how about let's check out our lesson today and learn more about these floating villages.
One famous area for floating villages is Ha Long Bay, Vietnam. The people make a living as fishermen. They catch and raise fish. They also offer rooms, boat tours, and seafood meals to visitors.
So we're looking at part 2 of visiting the world's floating villages today. So remember we learned what floating villages are, and today we're going to talk about where you can find these floating villages.
Exactly right. I mentioned the one I visited in Cambodia, not too far from Taiwan. But if you really want to get to a floating village as fast as you can, there's one even closer. One famous area for floating villages is Ha Long Bay, Vietnam. So just next to Cambodia, a bit closer to us. This, I think, is in the north part of Vietnam. So you would probably fly to Hanoi, the capital, and not too far from there on the coast is Ha Long Bay, a beautiful part of the world. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it. Also, there's a floating village there. What do people do? Well, not too surprising. The people make a living as fishermen. It's a floating village. It's on the water. There's fish in the water. They catch and raise fish. So they're not just out there catching the fish, they're raising fish. In some ways, we would say they are farming fish.
Ah, that is right. So first they have to catch the fish though. So to catch, that is a verb. It just means to stop someone or something that is moving through the air by getting hold of it or in the water, right? Catching the fish because you can see fish in the water. So for example, you can say try to catch the ball. All right, so try to catch and then raise the fish, right?
Exactly. Well, they'll catch some, I guess, and then raise some of the others. When you raise something like this, of course, to raise in the physical world, we would mean you're putting something higher, you're lifting something into the air. You raise your hand in class. But here, no, we're not talking about it in that way. We're talking about it in the way that a parent will raise their children. Or if you have dogs and you like to have puppies, then you might raise puppies. This is sort of like what humans do when they are farming with animals. So a chicken farmer will raise chickens, right? They need more chickens to make more eggs or to make more meat. They don't just go out and catch them in the forest. They have places where the chickens have babies. They make sure the babies grow up healthy, and then they use the babies for other things. In some parts of Taiwan, you can see these kind of little lakes right near the highway or the train tracks. They have these machines kind of slapping the water. That's to put air into the water because that is a fish farm. They are raising fish in the same way that a farmer might raise cows or goats or pigs. The other types of farmers, fish farmers, will raise fish. And then, of course, use the fish for meat once they get big.
That's right. And I love eating fish. How about you?
I absolutely do. It's very good for you. And of course, raising fish is great because that means we're not taking fish out of the oceans. And of course, that is bad for the numbers of fish in the ocean. So that's why we farm them when we can.
Exactly. Okay, let's find out what else they do other than catching and raising fish. They also offer rooms, boat tours, and seafood meals to visitors. Wow. Okay, these are great business ideas because a lot of people who would like to visit, let's say, Vietnam or go to these floating villages, of course, they want some entertainment, they want good food. These are the things that you are looking for when you visit or travel to a new place. So like boat tours, like a boat that would take you from places to places. You may also have a guide for the boat tour who explains things to you, right?
Yep.
So there's our many different business ideas, and then you can get more tourists to come.
That's right. So they make money both from fishing and from tourism. And of course, those come together when they serve wonderful seafood to the tourists. Seafood is basically a very general term that we use to talk about anything that we get from the oceans, lakes, rivers even included, that we eat for food, all right? So we're not just talking about fish, we're also talking about lobsters, crab, shellfish like scallop or clams or things like that. All of those different things, we just call that seafood. In other words, animals that we eat that come from the water, that live in the water, and those can make a very delicious meal. Seafood, of course, is very popular and well known here in Taiwan as well.
That is right. I love eating seafood. And we're also talking about the word meal, and that is a noun. A meal is an occasion where people sit down and eat, usually at a regular time. For example, you could say she sat next to him throughout the meal. Okay, basically sitting together side by side and having something to eat right together at the dinner table.
Exactly. Of course, we have 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Anything else might be a snack, but if you're having one of those special things that you eat morning, afternoon, or evening, that is your meal. Let's take a quick break and then we'll be back with another floating village for you guys. In Peru, you can find the Oros people of Lake Titicaca. Their villages are on floating islands. They make them from a special reed in the area. One of the world's largest floating villages is Ganvi in Africa. Around 20,000 people live there, and it has a school, hospital, and shops. Floating villages are worth visiting.
Welcome back, everyone. So before the break, we were looking at one of the floating villages that we can find in the world, and that is in Ha Long Bay, Vietnam, right?
Exactly right.
And then we know that the people there, actually, some of them are fishermen. They catch and raise the fish, and some people offer rooms or boat tours or seafood meals to the tourists. They have great business ideas to attract people coming here and make some money, right?
That's very, very true. And it's a popular place to go. I think a lot of us have heard of Ha Long Bay. You've seen pictures of it. It is very popular with many tourists who visit Vietnam. Now we're going to turn our attention to a part of the world that is very far away from Taiwan and maybe not as famous as Ha Long Bay, but they have a floating village there too. It says in Peru, you can find the Oros people of Lake Titicaca.
Aw, so
right,
cute.
so Peru, we are in South America, over there on kind of the western side of the continent. Lake Titicaca is a very famous lake, maybe because it has a cool name. And the Oros people are native people, Aboriginal people, who've probably been living there for thousands and thousands of years, and they also live in a floating village. This is a little different. It says their villages are on floating islands.
Floating islands?
So really little islands that are surrounded by water, maybe not enough land to build a proper town with roads and buildings on the ground, but enough area to make a village above the water, and something special in that area that the people use to actually make their homes. They make them from a special reed in the area. So there's a type of reed that grows there. And I believe they also use this reed to make beautiful boats.
Really?
That kind of have the same shape as a boat here in Taiwan that you might find on Ludao or somewhere like that. But they use these reeds to make these boats and their homes. And what is a reed?
Well, a reed, that is a noun. A reed is a woody plant with long, slender leaves. And like you said, they are very useful because you can use them to make many, many things, right?
Oh, yeah.
And for example, our example sentence is, reeds need a lot of moisture and they usually grow in or near a marsh. And what's a marsh? Marsh basically just means like a wet, muddy area of land.
Exactly right. I think reeds are maybe a type of grass too, but not quite the grass we think of. This is thicker grass, and yeah, it often grows out of very wet, swampy, muddy ground, maybe next to a river, for example.
That's right. So now back to the article.
Okay.
One of the world's largest floating villages is Ganvi in Africa. Around 20,000 people live there.
Whoa.
And it has a school, hospital, and shops.
It's a floating town, not a floating village.
Yeah, because you were talking about how a village could be like for 50 to 100 people, but that's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people, absolutely. So they have all the things you would expect to have, homes and shops and little stores, but they also have hospitals and schools and things you would expect to find in a town and not in a village anywhere, especially a hospital, because this is a large building, maybe several buildings, but it's a large place built to take care of sick people. You will have doctors and nurses and patients in hospitals if you're really sick, if you need an operation, if you need to stay in the hospital and have nurses and doctors there to take care of you. Until you get better, you will stay in a hospital. Hopefully you won't, because you never have a health problem. But if you do, the hospital's the place to go where they will fix you up and all the doctors and nurses will do the best they can to make sure you're healthy and comfortable.
That's
and
right.
so they have a hospital built in this village in Ganvi, which is in the country of Benin, if you're trying to find it on a map. That's incredible.
And it's really hard to imagine how you can have a hospital in the floating village and as well as a school, right? So it's actually very convenient. I would love to pay a visit. And back to the article, it says floating villages are worth visiting. When you say something is worth visiting or a place is worth visiting, that means you definitely don't want to miss this opportunity of visiting this place. You have to see it at least once in your lifetime, right?
They might be a little hard to get to, a little away from the big cities, but if you take the time and effort to get there, you will have a very unique, special experience because, hey, after all, most people don't live or even get to see floating villages. They're just not that common.
That's right. But I would love to see one. I haven't seen one yet.
Absolutely. Check it out. All right, guys. Thanks for all the time that you spend with us. We enjoy spending time with you too and learning about fascinating places like the ones we learned about today and yesterday. Take care, and we'll see you back here soon. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you next time.
One famous area for floating villages is Ha Long Bay, Vietnam. The people make a living as fishermen. They catch and raise fish. They also offer rooms, boat tours, and seafood meals to visitors. In Peru, you can find the Oros people of Lake Titicaca. Their villages are on floating islands. They make them from a special reed in the area. One of the world's largest floating villages is Ganvi in Africa. Around 20,000 people live there, and it has a school, hospital, and shops. Floating villages are worth visiting.
Hello, I'm Tina. 我们来看这一课的重点单字。第一个 catch 动词捉捕，它的三态是 catch, caught, caught。The cat tried to catch the mouse. 猫试图要捉住老鼠。下一个单字 raise 动词饲养。Fanny raised cows on her farm. Fanny 在农场饲养乳牛。下一个单字 meal 名词餐点。I prepared a delicious meal for my family yesterday. 昨天我为家人准备了一顿美味的餐点。最后一个单字 hospital 名词医院。My mother works at the hospital. 我妈妈在医院工作。接着我们来看重点文法。第一个 make a living as fishermen. 以当渔夫为生。Make a living 指的是维持生计，它的后面可以加上介系词 as 来接职业，表示以某个职业为生。Fisherman 指的是渔夫。我们来看看这个例句。Roy tried to make a living as a taxi driver. Roy 试图当计程车司机来维持生计。下一个文法 One of the world's largest floating villages is Ganvi in Africa. 世界上最大的水上浮村之一是非洲的甘维埃。One of 加名词指的是什么的其中一个，这是单数一个，记得要搭配单数的动词。注意 of 后面的名词必须为复数。Largest 是 large 的形容词最高级。我们来看看这个例句。Joe is one of my close friends. Joe 是我亲近的朋友之一。最后一个文法 Something is worth 加上 VING 某事物值得怎么样。Worth 是一个介系词，意思是值得。我们来看看这个例句。That movie is worth watching. 那部电影值得一看。以上就是这一课的重点单词跟文法，回去记得复习哦。我们下一课再见，拜拜。
Dulan is the largest tribe in the southern part of the eastern coast, and Dulan Mountain, standing in eastern Taiwan, is revered by the indigenous people as a holy mountain. The area boasts the Dulan relics, coastal tidal zones, and the unique culture of the Amis people. Sintung Sugar Factory Culture Park, after being abandoned for years, has been turned into an arts and culture hub run by local artists. Sintung Sugar Factory Culture Park is a multi-purpose creative space. It is also known as Dulan Sugar Factory. It is located at the bottom of Dulan Mountain, seen as a holy mountain in Beinan culture. Originally, the Culture Park was a private sugar refinery located in Dulan Village, Donghe Township, Taidong County, Taiwan. During World War II, the refinery suffered damage from U.S. bombing. It was officially closed in 1991. Many years after its closing, local artists decided to revive the buildings and turn them into art spaces. Many areas and buildings of the sugar factory are now well preserved. The Culture Park includes art showrooms, original handmade wooden fountain pen shops, handicraft shops, cafes, bars, and even a bed and breakfast. Sintung Sugar Factory Culture Park perfectly blends traditional buildings with modern art. Now in Dulan, many local artists are working hard to promote indigenous art. For example, Siki Sufin creates beautiful driftwood carvings using traditional anis carving techniques. Since the artists moved in, the Sintung Sugar Factory has become a vibrant artistic space where old and new cultures mix to spark creativity.